My car was parked perfectly, yet the HOA sent a menacing letter. $500 fine or we tow it. Then I found drugs stashed under my seat, drugs I'd never seen. Someone wanted me gone, and the HOA resident, Karen, smirked when I confronted her. Her smug face froze when I flashed my badge. I wasn't just a homeowner. I was the FBI director. Who planted the drugs, and why was Karen so desperate to ruin me? What secret was this neighborhood hiding that they'd frame a federal agent to protect? I'd always dreamed of a quiet life, a place where my kids could ride bikes down wide, tree-lined streets, and I could sip coffee on my porch without a care. When we moved into Willow Creek, a pristine suburban neighborhood with manicured lawns and white picket fences, it felt like we'd hit the jackpot. My name's David, a single dad of two, working long hours as a federal employee to keep our little world spinning. The community was tight-knit, or so I thought. Neighbors waved, kids played, and the HOA's glossy welcome packet promised harmony. But I noticed Karen, the HOA president, watching my every move. Her clipboard was always out, her eyes sharp, noting who parked an extra inch off the curb or left a bike on the lawn too long. At first, I shrugged it off. She was just a stickler for rules, right? My kids, Emma and Jake, loved their new school, and I was settling into a routine, mowing the lawn, paying bills, keeping things low-key. I wasn't here to make waves. But then came the first letter, tucked into my mailbox like a quiet threat. Non-compliance with parking regulations. Correct immediately. My car was parked perfectly, same as always. I double-checked, measured the distance from the curb spot on. Something felt off. Karen's house, directly across the street, had a clear view of my driveway. I'd catch her staring from her window, her silhouette framed against the blinds. The neighborhood was picture perfect, but a chill ran through me. Why was she so fixated on me? What rule had I supposedly broken? Little did I know, this was just the start. A spark that would ignite a battle I never saw coming. One that would unravel secrets this idyllic community fought to keep buried. The first letter was just the beginning, a pebble rolling down a hill that would soon become an avalanche. I stood in my driveway, holding the HOA's notice, the paper crisp and official, demanding I pay a $200 fine for unauthorized vehicle positioning. My SUV was parked exactly as it had been for weeks, tires aligned with the curb, no overlap onto the street. I glanced at Karen's house across the way, her blinds twitching as if she'd been watching me read it. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over Willow Creek's perfect lawns, but the neighborhood's charm was starting to feel like a mask. I tossed the letter onto my kitchen counter, figuring I'd deal with it later. I had enough on my plate: work deadlines, Emma's soccer practice, Jake's science project. But the next morning, another letter arrived. This one cited excessive lawn growth. My grass was barely an inch over the Anja 1.5-inch limit. I mowed it that afternoon, sweat dripping down my back, but the unease gnawed at me. Why was I being singled out? Days later, a third letter came, this time claiming my mailbox was non-compliant with the HOA's color code. I checked the rule book. My mailbox was the same shade of charcoal gray as every other one on the block. I knocked on Karen's door to clear things up, my heart pounding a little harder than I'd like to admit. She answered with a tight smile, her clipboard clutched like a shield. "David, rules are rules," she said. her voice syrupy but sharp. I asked for specifics, but she waved me off, saying the board would review my case at the next meeting. As I walked away, her gaze burned into my back, and I couldn't shake the feeling I'd just poked a hornet's nest. The fines kept coming, each one more absurd than the last. $150 for unapproved porch furniture, my kids' folding chairs. $300 for unsightly trash bins tucked neatly behind my garage. My savings, already stretched thin, took hit after hit. I started documenting everything, photos of my lawn, my car, my mailbox, hoping to prove I was following the rules. But the HOA didn't care about proof. At the community meeting, I stood before the board, a group of 5 neighbors led by Karen, their faces stone cold. I presented my evidence, my voice steady but my hands shaking. Karen barely glanced at my photos before declaring the fines non-negotiable. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner and the smug tap of her pen against her clipboard. A neighbor, Tom, shifted uncomfortably in his seat but said nothing. I left the meeting humiliated, my neighbor's eyes avoiding mine, as if I were a problem they didn't want to touch. The harassment escalated. One evening, I found a note taped to my door. Move out or face consequences. No signature, but the handwriting matched the meticulous cursive on Karen's HOA notices. I installed a security camera the next day, its red light blinking in the dark. The footage caught Karen circling my driveway at midnight, her flashlight sweeping over my car. She didn't touch anything, but her presence sent a chill through me. What was she looking for? I started parking in my garage, but the next morning my tires were slashed 4 clean cuts, deliberate and precise. The repair cost me $600, and the police called it vandalism with no clear suspect. I knew better. Karen's house was dark that night, but I swear I saw her silhouette in the window, watching. My kids noticed the tension. Emma stopped riding her bike, saying she didn't like how that lady stared at her. Jake asked if we were going to lose the house. I hugged them tight, promising everything would be fine, but inside, I was unraveling. I couldn't afford to keep paying fines, and the constant scrutiny was suffocating. I dug into the HOA's rulebook, searching for loopholes. It was a maze of vague clauses and contradictory regulations designed to trap people like me. I found a section about board overreach, but challenging it required a petition signed by half the neighborhood. I went door to door, my evidence folder in hand, but most neighbors shut their doors before I could finish. "Don't want trouble," one said. Another whispered, "Karen's got connections." Connections? What did that mean? Then came the incident that pushed me to the edge. I came home from work to find a tow truck in my driveway, its driver hooking up my SUV. I ran outside, shouting, "This is my property." The driver handed me a notice from the HOA, signed by Karen, claiming my car was abandoned. Abandoned? I'd driven it that morning. I managed to stop the tow, but when I checked my car, something felt wrong. The door was slightly ajar, though I always locked it. I searched inside and found a small plastic bag under the driver's seat, white powder, tightly packed. My heart stopped. I wasn't just being harassed. Someone was trying to frame me. I locked the bag in my safe, my hands trembling. This wasn't about parking or lawns anymore. This was personal. I confronted Karen the next day, the bag burning a hole in my mind. She stood on her porch, her face calm but her eyes glinting with something I couldn't place. Triumph, maybe. "David, you're paranoid," she said, folding her arms. "Maybe you should move somewhere less strict." Her tone was mocking, but there was a flicker of unease when I stepped closer, my voice low. "I know what you're doing," I said. She didn't flinch, but her smile tightened. As I walked away, I heard her mutter something under her breath, too quiet to catch. What was she hiding? Why was she so determined to drive me out? And what would she do next if I didn't back down? The neighborhood felt like a pressure cooker, every glance from a neighbor laced with suspicion. I started researching Karen, digging through public records, HOA minutes, anything I could find. She'd been president for a decade, unchallenged, her authority absolute. There were whispers of past residents who'd left suddenly after crossing her, but no details. One night, my camera caught her again, this time slipping a letter into my mailbox at 2 a.m. It was another fine $500 for suspicious activity. Suspicious activity. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was done playing defense. Whatever Karen was planning, I'd be ready. But what was her endgame, and how far would she go to win? The pressure had built to a boiling point, every nerve in my body screaming for justice as I stared at the plastic bag of drugs locked in my safe. I knew Karen was behind it, her midnight prowls, her smug denials, the way her eyes darted when I accused her. But knowing wasn't enough. I needed proof, and I needed to end this nightmare before it swallowed my family whole. As the FBI director, I'd spent years dismantling criminal empires. But here in Willow Creek, I was just David, the single dad under siege. I couldn't flash my badge, yet not without risking my cover or escalating things further. But the time for hiding was over. I started piecing it together, using my skills discreetly. Late nights in my home office, I reviewed security footage frame by frame, spotting Karen's gloved hand slipping into my car during one of her inspections. The video was grainy but clear enough. She planted the bag, her face twisted in determination under the streetlight's glow. My blood ran hot with fury. How dare she endanger my kids, my life, over some petty power trip? I dug deeper, accessing public databases through secure channels, uncovering Karen's history. She wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She had a record embezzlement charges from a previous HOA dropped under suspicious circumstances. Whispers of kickbacks from contractors, rigged elections to keep her in power. Willow Creek wasn't idyllic. It was her kingdom, built on intimidation and secrets. Residents had fled before, silenced by threats or fabricated scandals. One former neighbor's story mirrored mine. Fines, vandalism, then a planted theft accusation that forced them out. Karen's motive crystallized. She saw me as a threat, someone who might challenge her rule. Maybe my federal job pinged on her radar, or perhaps it was just my refusal to bow. Either way, she wanted me gone, and the drugs were her nuclear option. If I got arrested, my career would crumble, my kids taken away. The thought fueled a rage I hadn't felt since my toughest cases, a burning need for vindication that kept me awake, plotting my next move. I decided to strike at the heart of her power, the HOA board meeting. It was scheduled for the community center, a bland room with folding chairs and fluorescent lights where she held court like a queen. I spread the word subtly, emailing neighbors about urgent concerns, hinting at revelations that could change everything. Attendance swelled curiosity, overriding fear. As the day approached, tension coiled in my chest like a spring. I prepared my evidence. The video on a USB drive, printouts of her past, and the drug bag sealed as evidence. My hand shook as I dressed that evening, but my resolve was steel. Emma and Jake sensed it, hugging me tighter than usual. "Be careful, Dad," Emma whispered. I nodded, stepping into the night where street lamps cast eerie shadows on perfect lawns. The air was thick, humid, carrying the distant rumble of thunder, a storm brewing, mirroring the one inside me. The community center buzzed with murmurs as I entered, heads turning, eyes wide. Karen sat at the head table, her clipboard pristine, her smile forced. She avoided my gaze, but I caught the flicker of unease. The room filled quickly. Tom from next door, the quiet couple down the street, families I'd barely spoken to. I took a seat in the front row, my folder heavy on my lap. Karen called the meeting to order, her voice clipped, rushing through agenda items like parking permits and holiday decorations. But the air crackled with anticipation. Everyone knew this wasn't routine. When she opened the floor for comments, I stood, my heart pounding like a drum. "I have evidence of criminal activity within the HOA," I announced, my words slicing through the silence. Gasps rippled. Karen's face paled, but she recovered quickly, banging her gavel. "This is out of order. Sit down, David, or I'll have you removed." I didn't sit. Instead, I projected the video onto the wall, the room's projector humming to life. There she was, caught in 4K clarity, sneaking to my car, glancing around, then stuffing the bag inside. The audience leaned forward, whispers turning to shocked outbursts. Karen's composure cracked. She stood, pointing a trembling finger. "That's fabricated. You're the criminal here." She pulled out her phone, dialing dramatically. "I'm calling the police. We found drugs in his car, illegal substances. He's a danger to our community." The room erupted, neighbors arguing, some defending her out of habit, others doubting for the first time. I felt the weight of their stares, the helplessness I'd endured flipping to empowerment. As she spoke into the phone, describing me as unstable and armed, my anger peaked a red-hot surge that made my vision tunnel. The police arrived minutes later, sirens wailing outside, blue lights flashing through the windows. 2 officers entered, hands on holsters, scanning the chaotic scene. Karen rushed to them, gesturing wildly. "Arrest him. He's been harassing me, and there are drugs in his vehicle, proof he's dealing." The officers nodded, approaching me with cautious steps. The room held its breath, tension thick enough to choke. I stood tall, meeting their eyes. "Officers, before you proceed, you need to see this." I handed over the USB and the sealed bag. One officer frowned, glancing at Karen, who smirked triumphantly. But as they reviewed the footage on a laptop, her expression shifted smugness to confusion, then dawning horror. That's when I dropped the bombshell. Reaching into my jacket, I pulled out my badge, the gold eagle gleaming under the lights. "I'm not just a resident," I said, my voice steady but laced with the fury of months of torment. "I'm the director of the FBI, and this," I pointed to the screen, to the drugs, to her frozen face, "is evidence of tampering, framing, and potential federal crimes." The room exploded in chaos. Neighbors gasped, murmuring, "FBI?" Like a wave. The officers straightened, saluting instinctively, their demeanor shifting from suspicion to respect. Karen staggered back, her clipboard clattering to the floor. Her face drained of color, eyes wide as saucers, mouth agape in a silent scream. She froze, utterly still, as if time had stopped for her alone. The smug tyrant who'd ruled with fines and fear was unraveling before our eyes, her empire crumbling in real time. But she wasn't done fighting. In a desperate bid, she lunged forward, grabbing at the laptop. "This is a lie. He's impersonating an officer." Her voice cracked, high-pitched and frantic. The officers restrained her gently, one cuffing her wrists as protocol kicked in. She thrashed, screaming accusations, but her words fell flat, drowned by the crowd's turning tide. Neighbors stood, some applauding, others sharing their own stories of her abuse fines they'd paid in silence, threats they'd endured. Tom admitted she'd blackmailed him into silence. The quiet couple revealed forged documents. It was a cascade, years of pent-up frustration bursting free. I watched, vindication washing over me like a cool wave, extinguishing the fire of my rage. But beneath it, pity stirred. She was pathetic, a small-time bully exposed. As they led her away, her eyes locked on mine, pleading now, the freeze thawing into tears. "You can't do this," she whispered, but it was over. The officers confirmed my identity with a quick call, and the meeting dissolved into a frenzy of questions and relief. I stepped outside, the storm finally breaking, rain pounding the pavement like applause. My kids waited at home, safe, but the battle's scars lingered. This climax wasn't just my victory. It was the neighborhood's awakening. The storm outside mirrored the one that had raged in Willow Creek for months, rain lashing against the community center's windows as Karen was led away in handcuffs. Her once impeccable blouse was rumpled, her hair disheveled, and her eyes, those sharp, judgmental eyes, were now wide with disbelief and defeat. The officers handled her with professional detachment, but the neighborhood watched in stunned silence, the weight of her downfall settling over the room like a heavy fog. I stood there, badge still in hand, feeling the adrenaline ebb away, replaced by a profound exhaustion. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every resident she'd terrorized, every family she'd pushed to the brink. As the doors closed behind her, the murmurs began relief, anger, vindication mixing into a cacophony that filled the void she'd left. In the immediate aftermath, the HOA board dissolved into chaos. With Karen gone, the remaining members, shell-shocked and suddenly leaderless, scrambled to regain control. Tom, the quiet neighbor who'd shifted uncomfortably during my earlier pleas, stepped forward hesitantly. He'd been her reluctant accomplice, coerced by threats to his own property. Now, free from her shadow, he proposed an emergency vote to suspend all pending fines, including mine. The motion passed unanimously, hands shooting up across the room. My stack of unjust penalties, thousands of dollars in fabricated charges, vanished like smoke. Neighbors approached me afterward, shaking my hand, sharing their own stories of her tyranny. One woman confessed she'd nearly lost her home over a non-compliant garden. Another admitted to paying hush money to avoid her wrath. It was cathartic, this collective unburdening, as if Willow Creek was exhaling after holding its breath for years. The police investigation unfolded swiftly, my FBI credentials opening doors that might have otherwise remained shut. They analyzed the drug bag, confirming it was cocaine street grade, traceable to a local dealer with ties to Karen's past. Turns out, her embezzlement history wasn't isolated. She'd been skimming HOA funds to fuel a hidden addiction, using the association's money for personal vices. The planted drugs weren't just a frame job. They were from her own stash, a desperate attempt to deflect suspicion if questions arose about missing finances. Forensic teams scoured her home, uncovering ledgers of falsified accounts, evidence of extortion from contractors, and a network of intimidation that spanned the neighborhood. Charges piled up: tampering with evidence, drug possession, fraud, harassment. Karen's kingdom crumbled under the scrutiny, her assets frozen, her reputation in tatters. For me, the resolution brought a mix of triumph and reflection. Returning home that night, rain-slicked streets reflecting the streetlights, I hugged Emma and Jake tighter than ever. They'd waited up, faces pressed to the window, worry etched in their young features. I explained as best I could, without the gritty details, that the mean lady wouldn't bother us any more. Their relief was palpable, smiles breaking through like sunlight after the storm. My job as FBI director remained intact. In fact, the incident highlighted vulnerabilities in suburban communities, leading to internal discussions about low-level corruption. I didn't seek publicity. My role demanded discretion, but word spread quietly, earning me quiet nods of respect from colleagues. The slashed tires, the endless fines, the planted evidence all faded into lessons learned, scars that reminded me of resilience. But the long-term consequences rippled far beyond my driveway. Willow Creek transformed in the weeks that followed. With Karen awaiting trial bail denied due to flight risk, the HOA reformed under new leadership. Tom became interim president, implementing transparent rules and community input sessions. Fines were reviewed and refunded where unjust, lawns allowed a bit more wildness, porches a touch more personality. Neighbors who'd lived in isolation began connecting. Block parties sprang up. Kids played freely without fear of clipboard-wielding enforcers. The once stifling atmosphere lifted, replaced by a tentative sense of community. One family, inspired by my stand, challenged a lingering rule about holiday decorations, winning a vote that brought colorful lights to every yard that winter. Karen's fate was sealed in court months later. Facing overwhelming evidence, she pled guilty to reduced charges, avoiding a lengthy trial but not the consequences. Sentenced to 5 years in prison, with probation to follow, she lost everything: her home foreclosed to repay embezzled funds, her social standing obliterated. Whispers followed her, even in incarceration. Former neighbors sent letters detailing the harm she'd caused, ensuring her reflection was thorough. Her family distanced themselves, ashamed of the web she'd woven. It was a stark fall from grace, a cautionary tale of power unchecked. Yet, in quieter moments, I pondered her motivations, the loneliness that might have driven her control, the insecurities masked by authority. Pity flickered, but justice prevailed. My life settled into a new normal, stronger for the ordeal. Work intensified with a promotion, recognizing my handling of the crisis without compromising operations. Emma and Jake thrived, their innocence preserved, though wiser to the world's pettiness. I volunteered for the reformed HOA advising on fair practices, turning my experience into positive change. The neighborhood's evolution was profound. Property values stabilized without the undercurrent of fear, and turnover dropped as families chose to stay. One resident even started a support group for HOA victims nationwide, amplifying our story anonymously to help others. As the dust settled, the absurdity of it all struck me, the way a clipboard and a title could wield such terror, how petty rules masked deeper corruption. Willow Creek became a beacon, proof that standing up, even against seemingly insurmountable odds, could dismantle empires built on sand. The long-term impact extended beyond our streets. Media outlets picked up similar stories, sparking debates on HOA reforms across the country. Legislation stirred in state houses, aiming to curb overreach and mandate transparency. My revelation as FBI director, though understated, inspired quiet heroes in other communities to speak out. In the end, this wasn't just about drugs in a car or a frozen expression on a tyrant's face. It was about reclaiming power from those who abuse it, about the strength found in vulnerability and the bonds forged in adversity. Willow Creek healed, scars fading into stories told over backyard barbecues. For me, it reaffirmed a truth I'd learned in the field. Evil thrives in silence, but light scatters it. And as I watched my kids play under the sun-dappled trees, free from shadows, I knew we'd not just survived, we'd transformed. What if more of us challenged the Karens in our lives? What worlds could we rebuild? The power is in our hands, waiting to be claimed.